Hey, welcome to my channel, I guess. Hold on a second. Okay, yay, that's pretty good. Let me put my rings on. If the lighting is right as it can be. I have been trying to put some videos into the ether that is YouTube for years. Some might even say decade. That's fine. Every day you learn and grow and new things can happen, which is fantastic. So I have the day off today, which is also fantastic. I'm at my studio and I wanted to share this space because it's really interesting. It's pretty cool where this studio is. And I'm going to be moving out of it in the next coming months. So that's wild. Moving is a wild thing. I've only done it once in terms of moving from I have moved several times in my life. Once when I was 18, I moved from my childhood home, and then I moved the following year and a half or so, and then I moved again out on my own for the first time when I was like in my early 20s, and then I moved in with my partner during lockdown, and then we moved out of the city and to a very, well, it's not very rural, but it's a rural place, and having grown up in a city my whole life, it was a really wild transition. And I had a studio in the city and it was really fantastic. It was a really cute space and like a communal shared room that was kind of divided up into little studio spaces. And that was really incredible to have that space, and I was able to afford it through a grant that I was awarded after graduating, as well as another grant that I applied to through the Arts Council of the city, the Toronto Arts Council. So that was pretty cool to have that studio space, and my partner also had a studio space. And then we moved to this rural place, and then we found this space. And it has been really cool to be sharing space. And we were really lucky to come across this place because it was kind of on our radar when moving out here, but hard to get a spot in because the people who are here renting this space, and this is like an old army airbase, so it's very like DIY space vibes, which is really cool to be in that kind of environment as an artist. I grew up hearing stories from my parents about, they also were born and raised in the same city that I grew up in. I would hear about how affordable the city used to be and all of the cool kind of DIY things that would happen. Like my dad talks about a rave at the Science Center. Like what? The Science Center doesn't even exist anymore, actually. And you know, I could go on and on about all the stories that I've heard and things I've experienced about kind of like DIY creative spaces of gathering in the city. And it was really difficult to leave all that behind and move here because moving in transition is really difficult. However, now that I am in the process of moving again for the first time in 2.5 years, and this is a really big move that I am going to be making, and it's been really destabilizing in an interesting way. I think to be destabilized and to be able to have the autonomy to make an active decision about how you go to and come from and move through places and space is also something interesting to think about. So that autonomy over your movement, I think, really can be helpful in dealing with change and transition that may feel destabilizing and can definitely be destabilizing, but can also be like there's so much room in that for new things to happen and growth. So that's what this painting that I'm working on is actually about. I have not been in the practice of sharing my work in progress in ways that I once was and have been more before. And that's kind of why I'm making this decision to move and change my circumstances so I can have access to more of that. And not to say that I couldn't build that here, because anything is possible anywhere you are. So yeah, all that to say, I'm at my studio today and I would like to share this space because it's a really cool space. So let's go. So this is the room that we are currently in. It is a decent size. My partner has one side and then I have the other side, which is really fun. And it's kind of divided by stuff we share in the middle here. This is my view. All right, so now let's walk out into the hallway. Oh, look at that. Birds' nests. We're in the meeting room. So this is actually an old airbase, but a training airbase from World War I. So that's pretty wild to be in this space. I'm in the studio space of the lovely artist whom we are subleasing our space from. It is that artist and her family that kind of have this space, and they are artists and makers themselves, and also own a couple of other, or not own, also rent a few other properties on the airbase. So I've been working at a small scale organic farm for the past 3 farming seasons. The first season I worked June to September, October, and then last year I worked the entire season, so April to December pretty much. And then this year I started working in April, and then I'm gonna work until I leave. And I've been doing like freelance art stuff on the side, so like murals, commission work, and that kind of thing, to substitute for when it is the off season. And also throughout the season I've been doing that. I've really appreciated having a designated space to work from. It is really dope. So one thing about it raining today is that it's super dark, which kind of makes it better, honestly, because it's like creepier. So we are going to be going into the other side of the barrack now. Here is the old washroom of this training facility. So we're in the old, hospital wing, training hospital, medical training center, which is kind of wild to think about this space as previously occupied by folks who were being trained to go to war, you know, but specifically to be in that, like, this is the vibe, you know what I mean? To be in that particular sector of war, like care. So yeah, this is our old wing. I think I can turn the flash off now. Still a little dark, but we used to be over here in this wing before the owners of the airbase, the people who bought it, who are kind of like gentrifying it, honestly. So yeah, basically we were here and then they raised the rent so much so that the people we subleased from had to downsize their studio space by half, and they've been here for a decade. Not too much on that, you know what I mean? But yeah, kind of whack, super whack. And so I feel like I should set this up. Well, let me show you that ass old studio space. So we were over here. It's pretty good acoustics in here. So you can see the outline of where some of my partner's paintings were. That is from me. It's kind of cool to think how these markings that we've left on the wall are gonna be here. Like, they're gonna renovate, they're gonna do whatever. They might even tear this whole thing down because it might not even be able to be renovated. However, yeah, like kind of the work that we've done here is gonna stay like physically on the building. It's pretty cool. It's been so interesting to be a part of this space and this environment, right? These old, they're not abandoned, these old barracks that are, it's probably so loud also, like when I'm recording here, it's probably super loud. Okay, back home because it was a little creepy and it was really loud also, like, so being in this space, in the studio, and witnessing the transformation of the entire base itself has been a trip. For a few different reasons. I mean, mainly, we were able to be in this space because the people we are subleasing from needed help with the rent, because the rent was raised exponentially, and kind of that's been the case for a lot of the people who have been here for a decade or so, renting for a very affordable rate, which is hard to find, period, but especially in a rural place where the majority of land is used for agriculture. So agriculture and tourism. So this place was bought by a company or a group of companies who are aiming to transform it into something that it is not at the moment. It's giving condo revitalization project but like next level, because it's a 25-year project and they're aiming to make this space a arts and culture hub. However, the aim is to attract more tourists with disregard for the people who are currently occupying the space, as well as the neighborhood that is directly adjacent to the base as well. So they want to build an entire new neighborhood over the next 25 years, and basically a town, when there is a town like at the bottom of the hill that the base is on. And the people who are in charge of this project have connections to Toronto. I witnessed and experienced the investments in real estate that is used for and marketed as a space for arts and culture. And the real estate projects that existed in the city that I moved from, one was, and this was the genesis of this company really, was the purchasing of community housing that was then torn down, and then condos were built, a park was built, a community center was built, a cultural center was also built. I went there, I participated in arts shows there, I worked in the condos once with an organization that created programming and community space for seniors in a particular area of the city. And so I got to speak to people who had been evicted essentially from their homes and then told that when the condo was built they would be able to move back, and some of the seniors did. However, that project was detrimental to a lot of the community, as those sorts of gentrification projects are. And that has happened so many times in the city. And I also experienced the bankruptcy of that organization that resulted in a lot of detriment to people who were reliant on that organization for housing, for community space, like the spaces that they were running programming out of or teaching out of, or those arts and culture-based spaces that this company invested so much money in and built condos around. That bankruptcy then led some of the people associated with that organization, company here. And now the project that they're executing here, I believe I see a lot of parallels with projects from the city. However, it's at this really large scale that is being advertised as well and written about in the local paper, in papers in the city. It's advertised as being like also state of the arts, so to speak. However, within that, there is a disconnect with how the project is being advertised, how it's being written about, what's being shared about it, even among some of the community members who live in the surrounding area, who are able to experience this place, or who have an experience with coming here and accessing arts and culture that perhaps was not present before, or rather did not have that investment in. So it's not such a this or that thing. Obviously, with anything, there's a lot of different experiences that people have around these sorts of projects, I think, and development projects specifically. And as I was speaking about earlier in the beginning of this video, how I would hear from my parents and people in the city, you hear about all of these incredible DIY spaces for arts, for artists, for makers, for, there's people who are electricians, for small business owners. That sort of space, accessible and affordable space, is so critical. And then the community that also forms around that space is also critical and also attracts a lot of attention because it's cool. That's where it's at a lot of the time. And so it's interesting to be in that kind of DIY space here that feels fleeting, period. So yeah, I just wanted to make a video to put out here, kind of documenting what it has been like to be making in this space and to be witnessing the transformation of this place. And place is always transforming, and there's a lot to learn from those forces of transformation. So to have this connection and be able to draw the connection to that force of transformation as well, in this case, it's like the company that is aiming to build an entire new community through employing developers, marketing managers, etc., rather than enriching what already exists here, which is all the people who are here already, who are being pushed out.